Hello, my friends. Thank you so much for carving out a little time to join me for the internship question and answer, the internship Q&A. I know that a lot of people have questions about internships as something that you've probably thought about at some point and maybe you've even experimented with, but especially since COVID, a lot of things have changed. Arguably, they've become less of a business priority. There's so many managers that are having a hard enough time keeping track of their paid, experienced staff. And so, in many circumstances, it means that some of these internships previous to COVID have dried up. And, what I'm here to say, among other things, is certainly to, meet and greet you. Thank you both again for being here. Wanting to kind of, hear your thoughts and especially your questions about internships. I have prepared some of the more frequently asked questions, and then I want to open it up for your questions that you may have, and certainly no foolish question. If you have the question, certainly other busy leaders probably have a similar question. And I'm just really excited to share a little bit more about what I've learned over the years. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Amy Mosher Berry, and I founded Visions Internships back in 2020. Remember that year? And it was really after 5 years teaching college and doing a number of other roles in the past where I saw that so many of my college students were graduating with zero real world experience. And so many of my friends and colleagues really were feeling like, hey, Amy, can you hook me up with a good intern? But, gosh, this is kind of stressful. What do I do? So it really occurred to me that I can help here. And as a social entrepreneur, I left my college teaching and I moved on to create Visions Internships. And it's been quite a wild ride. And I know for two of the people who are on this call, Linda, you're my more recent friend and mentor, and Joe, a longtime friend and mentor. And I just thank you both for, helping me along the way and your interest in the work that I'm doing. So hopefully we can collaborate and certainly share a little bit about who you are briefly, if you could start things off before I share slides. So Joe, if you want to say hello first and just, where you're calling in from, what role you have in the professional world, and if there's anything in particular that you'd like to get out of this session.
My name is Joe Grassi. I'm a vice president with Eastern Bank, and I'm in the commercial uh, lending area as a portfolio manager, managing a portfolio of commercial loans and staff that is responsible for it. In terms of visions, I think I've been part of a couple of these talks, and they're always very interesting. Maybe you have the ability to attract some incredible talent and put some incredible programs together. And I think that's what businesses desire. The trick is to find more of them who want to have impactful internships.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. And Linda, if you could please introduce yourself briefly, the work you do, and your interest in this topic.
Sure. My name's Linda Gild. I am the CEO of both the Gild Associates and Elephant Circle Management. We provide management services to other organizations, both for-profit and associations. And as Amy mentioned earlier, I connected with her in November and we've hired interns through the years and want to know more about her process and structuring a strong internship program.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. I'm going to begin sharing my slides, but as well, hopefully you know me. And if you're just meeting me watching this recording, I definitely, I'll use some supportive slides, but definitely the interactive conversation is super valuable. And again, this is an internship Q&A for busy leaders. So whether you're in for-profit, nonprofit, government, doesn't really matter. You can probably relate to some of this going on with my fine feathered friend here at his desk. Here it is. He'd love more project support, right? So managers are just trying to figure out how to do all the things. So maybe you want also to build a young talent pipeline that is ready to start when you're ready to hire. And let's be honest, you'd probably rather, quote, try it before you buy it. here in Massachusetts and other states. It is an employee-friendly state, which is wonderful for a lot of reasons, but it can be a headache if the employers hire the quote wrong person for the job. So the ability to, see that young person in action is really a wonderful opportunity with internship. So whenever possible, a lot of employers understandably want to hire from within. And you'd also, you'd like to better understand, well, what makes today's young people tick? What is it that's going to attract and retain high quality talent? Because we all know the high cost of turnover. And, yes, perhaps you're open to running an internship program, but it really can't become your second full-time job, and there has to be measurable ROI, return on investment. So can you guys relate to this friend at his desk? Any other thoughts, when you think about internships, like what comes to mind for you?
Well, I think it's got to be good for the business and good for the intern. The
Exactly.
intern has to have the opportunity to either develop skills or apply skills to the benefit of the business, and also work in, I don't know, I mean, are they supervised closely or not supervised closely?
Mm-hmm.
That depends on the business and what it's doing.
Yeah, great questions. I know, Linda, you've worked with interns in the past, and if you wanted to say anything else about your own experience.
I actually think the other piece of it is it gives the intern the opportunity to try out different environments and say, is this type of work right for me?
Exactly.
Because, um, and with a good internship program, you're not that try it before you buy it. You're not doing part of that mismatch of the person who
Mm-hmm.
thinks they want to be in finance, or go work for a bank and then realize, oh, I didn't actually understand what the day-to-day looked like. So on paper, they look good and it's a good match.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Totally.
so I think it's on both sides and you're kind of helping someone
Mm-hmm.
figure some of that piece of it out, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, that's really a great point is, it's sometimes, especially when we're in our early career stage and, you're not expected to know what you're supposed to do for the rest of your life. My mom used to joke she was, going on 75 and she still didn't know what she wanted to do with her life. So that's always, sort of, we say it in jest, but, allowing young people to explore and, it's almost like a mutual experience for them. Like you said, Linda, it's like it's okay to identify maybe something you're not interested in, and that too is a really great takeaway for the internship. So this I've already shared a little bit about my story, but I did launch my company in December of 2020, so arguably the darkest time of the darkest year. And really my motivation was to make internships work better for both the organizational leaders and the young professionals. And one of my favorite sayings is co-creating a world that works. And I had initially focused so much on the work ready intern. I realized about 2.5 years in that I had overlooked the need for the intern ready organization. So that was a really big insight and a pivot over here. We've done more of a B2B service, but I just can't give up on, you know, I've got to continue to do some level of direct service for my young professionals because I always have my college students and young people to thank for launching my business in the first place. So I'm really happy to say that we do have an annual career and leadership conference for young people. And we really find that that conference is such a great opportunity, whether organizational leaders want to consider being, a speaker, a sponsor, or sending your young people. It's a great way to stay connected to today's young people. So I'm really happy and grateful for the work that we do. And thank you to everyone who's interested. And hopefully we can collaborate moving forward. So this is a great image. This doesn't get old to me. So many people can relate to this. If you're a busy organizational leader and you're already feeling up to your eyeballs with your own work, you're like, oh my gosh, okay, internship, great concept, love it, would love it for my kid, maybe next year, but it just feels too time consuming and I'm not clear, I'm not convinced on the return on investment. And of course, the interns are doing the infamous eye roll, right? Oh my gosh, oh, I want to do purposeful work, right? I want to do something meaningful, not just menial. And they're often lacking training and support just because, understandably, the organization, they're tied up with a lot of things and they don't necessarily have a structured program or the staff to support it. Um, and I think, well, I'm going to leave you hanging. This is such a fun. I think you guys get the point, but there is this link. It's a 1 minute link. You know what? Let me see if it opens okay. It's very entertaining. Can you guys hear this okay though if I play it? I'm just gonna hit play. Please let me know if you hear this okay. Oh,
We got you those three new interns that are gonna help get all this work off your plate.
are you serious?
Yes, absolutely.
I feel like I just hit the lottery. Thank you so much. Oh my God, this is incredible. Uh, oh wait, who are these young people? What do they even know? Uh, are you gonna train them? Oh, 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 I need to train them and support them over time. What if I mess up? What if they mess up? Like, this is awesome, but I really can't take them. I'm not going to have time to work with these interns. But you know what? I'm going to bring this opportunity to the staff meeting on Friday, and we'll see who else can use the help. But thank you so much.
Okay, I guess, thank you.
What do you think? Joe, I don't know if you'd seen that before, but can you relate to that feeling? It still makes me crack up. All right.
Absolutely. I mean, somebody needs help. They say, what about an intern? Then the realization is, wait a minute, how do I teach that person to do something?
Right. Okay, so I want to go through it's about a handful of questions that I get a lot. So I want to sort of start with this, again, we're in an internship Q&A right now, so please, there are many questions I'm sure buzzing around your head. No question is a silly question, right? That educator's perspective, but I'm going to sort of blow through a few common questions I hear a lot, and then I want to open it up to more questions and discussion. So I want to first just take a moment to define what an internship is and what it is not. So an internship is, as you may know, it is by definition work, training, and education, sometimes considered training, on the job. It is not, however, a guaranteed job offer. So there's not that additional burden on the employer to know that they're going to be hiring. That is not something that's expected, nor by definition. So the next thing is that an internship is a supported learning experience. It is not a professional employment arrangement. It is a mutually beneficial exchange, and it is certainly not a source of cheap, quote, grunt labor. Um, it is short term, structured, and ideally project based. It is not intended to be a long term or unstructured or plugging interns to ongoing operations. It is meaningful and important projects. Overall, internships are not meant to be menial, although there's always the occasional menial work, right? That's life. But they're also not meant to be urgent or emergent projects. That's just not a good fit because you've got to build in the respect for the intern and their learning curve. By definition, they're less than experienced. So they need to be meaningful and important, but not urgent. That's a really important piece. And then what I call horizontal. So internships ideally are what we call horizontal in nature. So they're exposing young people to multiple paths and career opportunities, insights, people. I like to liken this. You guys remember when we did gym class back in the day, just a few years ago, and you had the different gym stations around the gym, right? Middle school, high school, right? And you do the hula hoop and you do the rope climb and you do the push-ups, right? So you want to ideally be plugged in to a structured project as an intern, but you still want to have exposure to different people doing related work, okay? And you don't really want that internship program to just be this vertical, exclusive, experience, and they're only like head down tunnel vision. They want to be exposed to more, so it's a real win-win. And the key takeaway, as it says at the bottom of the slide here, is that an internship, whether that's paid or unpaid, and we'll get to the compensation question, is distinct from a job and that the intern's learning is in fact the core focus. Internships, by definition, while this isn't something always known, it really does need to be a majority benefit, something called the primary beneficiary test we'll talk about in future slides. So is this helpful? Awesome. Okay, so just briefly, people often ask, well, what is the difference between hiring an intern versus fill in the blank, right? So if it's an employee, so more of a W-2, employee arrangement. Certainly, it is distinct in the sense that ideally, in most cases, an employee is intended to be more long-term, and there's always different stipulations with different circumstances. But the employee, obviously, you're exchanging, right? That employee comes with a certain level of experience or skill set, which qualifies them for the job. They're brought in the case of an employee, typically a W-2, and it's seen as a more long-term arrangement where they're exchanging their time and expertise for compensation, right? You're being paid. Contractor, whether that be a 1099, oftentimes I'll talk to employers that think they're looking for an intern, but actually they're looking for a more high level specialized contractor. They can get in, get out, do the job. They're not necessarily looking for an inexperienced intern, and that's with all due respect to young people. Let's talk about volunteers for a moment. So oftentimes people are like, oh, I'll just bring in interns or volunteers, almost like it's interchangeable. And I don't want to put anyone on the spot here, but just because it's between us, right? When you guys think about volunteering versus interning, right, is there anything like immediately that kind of pops to mind as to what makes interning very different than volunteering in your own experience?
Are there unpaid internships?
There are unpaid internships. We're going to talk about that in the next point, Joe, where it says, do you need to pay interns? And then we address credit briefly as well. So volunteers are volunteer, they are unpaid. So volunteers are not paid. In some cases, interns are unpaid, but you must meet certain criteria if that is to be the case, which is something we'll talk about in a moment. But the main difference between bringing on an intern and a volunteer, an intern, it's usually part of some structured learning objective. So they have something that they're out to accomplish. They're looking to ideally gain a particular skill or experience as part of their growth and development. Whereas volunteering, it's sort of more loose. It's sort of as they want to come in. It's probably not tied to a learning objective. And let's get to the question of, do you need to pay interns? So always a best practice when possible to pay interns. Now, that said, there's something to be said about knowing the federal and state guidelines around this. And I'm going to introduce you, if you're not already aware, about fact sheet 71. That is something that the Department of Labor puts out, and it's something related to the Fair Labor Standards Act. And again, if you just want to Google fact sheet 71, I will continue to share my screen. As you can see, this is a resource that's right off of the Department of Labor.gov. You can print the fact sheet yourself if you like. But the bottom line here is that they do have a 7-point test for unpaid interns and students. And this is especially important if you are a for-profit organization that is not paying your interns. You really need to be aware of this language and these requirements. So can you guys see this primary beneficiary test? This is really critical. And the primary beneficiary test just means there needs to be that majority benefit to the intern by design. And I'm going to just add something just from my own experience. Sometimes when people think, oh, unpaid internships, let's think about that. If it's clearly a majority, I'd say, we'll say full-time or even almost full-time. And I like to be more conservative and say, really, if it's over 15 hours per week, I don't care if you're a for-profit or nonprofit. My strong suggestion is that you are paying interns. Why? Because then only financially privileged young people have access to internships. But if you are at 15 hours or less per week, and again, some people say 20, but I like to be a little bit more thoughtful around this. If you're 15 hours or less per week, you can actually offer an unpaid internship so long as you are clear about what is that stated learning objective and you're really rising to the occasion. You're structuring a program with learning and training at the heart of it. You can be okay with not paying, but we do recommend, if at all possible, please pay your interns when you can. At minimum, it needs to be part-time or less to offer an unpaid internship. And if you're for profit not paying, you really want to pay attention to this. Nonprofits have a little bit more wiggle room. I'm going to, actually, for the heck of it, guys, just since you're on with me live, I will throw this Department of Labor link into the chat as a resource. And I'm going to go back to my slides. How we doing, you guys? Good. I know I get really passionate about this stuff. Have you noticed? Any quick thoughts or questions before I move on? Good? Awesome. All right. So this is a little bit less intense and legal, right? So what kinds of organizations are what we would consider a good fit to have internship programs, and why is that? So without getting into all the weeds, because we can certainly talk after this, and a lot of, my offerings have to do with helping people specifically understand this and design this and launch a great program. But what we've learned is that human and social services are wonderful organizations. I know that's extremely vast, but these are great opportunities. There's often so many different departments. Oftentimes, remember, internship programs tend to start within a certain department, and human and social services, because they are naturally serving people, they are purpose oriented, a lot of opportunity there. I do want to also say something about professional services. So this often may include financial institutions. It could be banks. It could be smaller offices, whether it's, CPA or dental firms. I want to also talk about the innovation sector. This is a wonderful opportunity to get young people plugged into really exciting, kind of cutting edge technology, whether that's fintech, biotech, green tech, on and on. They tend to be very motivated, and they're also industries that tend to attract young people because it's not only kind of cutting edge, but they can, take advantage of the fact that our young people tend to be more digital natives, if you will. They're kind of quick studies. They love figuring stuff out and using the latest technology. And I just want to make a note at the bottom in terms of why we've come to realize these are great types of organizations, is because they are purposeful in nature. They are meaningful, not menial. And they are very good in terms of developing specific projects, right? So working on a particular project where the intern can be clear about what their role is, and yet it's versatile. They're exposed to a lot of different people and other departments in these sorts of organizations. And then also, I can't help but say something about the hybrid or flexible nature of these sorts of organizations. If you're doing something that's more hands-on or labor intensive, right? Not to say that you couldn't create an internship program, let's say in, construction or manufacturing, but you need to be a little bit more creative with that sort of work, because young people are going to be asked to do hybrid work, in some cases more remote work. And I do want to say something about that for young people. Anytime we can get young people in the physical door, all the better. But to have that hybrid option, we've noticed is a good thing to look at, especially in today's day and age, certainly since COVID. So what are common intern roles? There are so many different possibilities, but what we see a lot has to do with whether it be in marketing, communications, event prep or support, even some day of help. I already mentioned a little bit on the tech side of things, but tech and process improvement, we cannot like turn our head today without hearing AI, right? So young people are naturally curious about this stuff. They're already using a lot of these apps, and they can actually bring a lot of that insight, that technical insight. They can sort of, test out and figure out, make recommendations as to what AI tools, how can we map out workflows and then automate those workflows, right? So they're really interested in offering. I'm going to also say, especially for graduate students, they love to figure out a challenge. So if you have a special project that you've been wanting to tackle and get to, remember, it's important, but not necessarily urgent. And if they can make recommendations, if they can sort of give you some ideas, potential solutions to a challenge you're having, those are some wonderful, especially graduate level and even upper grad, undergrad, junior, senior type roles. And then I also, certainly would be remiss if I didn't say anything about research and analysis. So whether that's, in data and kind of, getting even some market research or research supporting a grant application or anything like that, and then analyzing, right? Analyzing a current process, again, recommending a process with recommendations. They love that sort of thing. So I'm going to pause. I don't know if you guys, I get so carried away. I just want to make sure I'm pausing. If you want to add anything, if you want to ask anything before we move on, please feel free. On a roll, right, Linda? I'm going to take a sip of my agua. How you doing, Joe?
Doing fine.
Okay. So I do want to say something briefly about what is the difference between having interns versus having an internship program. You probably heard it yourself, right? Or maybe even personally, you're like, oh yeah, I've worked with interns. Oh yeah. Or maybe I was an intern, right? Just a few years ago. I myself had a couple of different internship experiences, but there is really something to be said about being an individual intern versus having a more structured internship program. And really what I want to help busy leaders think about, and I want you to feel supported in knowing there's so much else on your plate, I want you to consider what a well-structured, well-run internship program can do to add business value versus just having a one-off intern experience. Let's say, you're a good doobie, right? And you want to help your neighbor's kid with the internship this summer, but you just kind of pull him in, you ask, you poll some colleagues, who could use an intern. And then what ends up happening is because you lack a structure and a repeatable process, you end up recreating the wheel each time you consider this, as opposed to actually having a clear systems and processes. And really what I help organizations do is create an internship playbook that brings a customized solution to your own business, because every company is going to need something a little bit different. But there really are some step-by-step best practices, and that's really what I want to focus on, is the power of actually developing an internship program. And you guys, I know I'm dating myself here. You can relate to this. You know that old expression, a stitch in time saves nine? So it's like when you plan the work and then work the plan, it's so much more fruitful in the end, and it's less work over time. So any quick thoughts on this difference? I'm sure you can relate to this in other areas of your work lives and in life in general, right? So, I'm finishing up here. I want to open it up to some other questions and thoughts. But another question I want to put forth is, well, is an internship program right for my organization, right? Is it right for your organization? And, after a lot of sort of deep thought and experience with this, I've come up with these 5 circles, these 5 statements, if you will. And you really want to look at this, are at least 4 out of 5 of these statements true for you and your organization? So number 1 is that you need frequent project support. And you can specify, well, gosh, we keep needing this project support. It would be so great to have an intern or interns working on this. But it's a thought, it slips away, you get busy, and you're on to the next thing. But do you need frequent project support? And if so, do you know that the similar things keep popping up in terms of your needs? Number 2 is that building a talent pipeline is a priority for you, for your organization. And again, remember, most internship programs don't straddle an entire organization. It usually starts within a department or a specific project, but that wherever you're looking at interns as part of your growth strategy, that you're thinking already that, building talent pipeline is really a priority for us, in the next few months, 6 months, 12 months. Number 3 is that you prefer to hire from within whenever possible. And what a better way, right, to have young people that, it's sort of, you try it before you buy it. I say that in the best sense of the word. Most internship programs run about 10 weeks. And so you have an opportunity to really, see those diamonds in the rough, and you get to see them, perform and learn and grow and of course mess up. But gosh, if it worked out, wouldn't it be great to be able to hire one of those interns? Although it's not legally required of you as an employer. Number 4 is that you believe in training and supporting new talent. Very important. I know we can say that it can be, part of our company standards, but life gets busy, and it's like, do you have a good way to be able to train and support new talent, especially that less than experienced talent early on? And finally, number 5 is that you're open and able to pursue new ideas, such as, for example, an internship program or really any other initiative that you have on your mind. Really, we know that developing any new program is a project in and of itself. And we also know that we can think about and even design a new program and then not launch the thing we've planned, right? Have you guys, right, ever been in it's like, oh, this is so great. And you can design something. It doesn't guarantee the launch or successful launch of what you've designed. So these are some ways to figure out, does this make sense for us to even pursue as an organization? Do you guys have any thoughts on that? So people have said that that's sort of a helpful slide to help them think through kind of what next. So I wanted to pause here and just sort of say, if there's anything that you wanted to comment on that I've covered so far, if you have any other questions whatsoever, and knowing, of course, a lot of, Visions Internship services being so focused now on really helping those busy leaders, design, launch, and run a great internship program. A lot of the details or more specific questions may come out in how we help organizations through our services, but I wanted to give an opportunity for you to comment or especially ask any other questions you have about all things internships.
Well, I think the previous slide provides a little bit of the building blocks in talking about an internship and starting to parse what the business needs are and how they want to go about it.
That's good. That's helpful. Um, Linda, do you have any questions that come to mind for you that we haven't covered? No? Awesome. All right, guys, I'm gonna stop my share for just a moment. I think because we do have a little time, and feel free if you have other questions, maybe something we haven't covered, like we talked briefly about like duration, like a typical duration of an internship. Sometimes people have questions about that. I do recommend that an internship program be at least 8 weeks. Usually 10 weeks is a sweet spot, and it's typically no more than 12. Sometimes international students may have longer internship program duration, so that's just something to keep in mind. I do want to say something about credits for a moment. There is, I would say, a sort of a common thought, and it can also be a little bit of a misconception that, oh, well, maybe I won't pay my interns because I'll just sign off on helping them get college credit. Have you guys sort of heard that rationale? And obviously, college credit for an active college student is absolutely beneficial. That is valuable. It is, in essence, a form of compensation. But I really want to caution busy leaders who are thinking about this. Don't just assume that especially your summer intern, will be happy with just credit instead of payment. And I'm going to tell you why for just a moment. It's not something that most people think of. But when you think about it, if you're an active college student wanting an internship, ideally a full-time, ideally paid internship over the summer, they're wanting that because they're more freed up. They're available to be an intern, ideally, again, full-time and paid if possible in the summer. Well, guess what? Because they're available full-time for an internship, that means they're not considered a full-time enrolled student because they're in between semesters. Does that make sense? So if they're in between semesters, they're going to therefore need to pay out of pocket for that internship credit. Whereas if they were to do a spring or fall internship, likely part-time, potentially part of their course load, it would be considered part of their full-time course load. They wouldn't need to pay for that internship credit in most cases, and it's a real win-win. So don't just assume that those summer interns are going to be happy with a non-paid internship in lieu of credit. Is that helpful? Right?
Yeah.
And just kind of having a conversation with them, not only about their situation, but they love when you ask them about what are their goals, what are their career interests, who are some people that they would love to learn more about their roles in your organization, right? So if you guys think about your own organization, your own experience, right? Joe, you might hold a certain role. I don't want to misspeak, but you're in the commercial lending department at your bank. Is that accurate?
Yes.
I know you've worn a lot of hats. So, they may come in, and I know you've worked with young people and you're a mentor. In fact, you just recently got that award. So rock on. Thank you for all of your support to young professionals. But you are so resourceful. So you kind of want to introduce, that young person to somebody else who may have a different title, a different set of responsibilities, right? So you can be kind of their for them to be exposed to other pathways in your organization, which is so wonderful, and yet still plug them into a project. So that's just something I know we didn't quite cover in the slides. And I would like, just because we do have a little time, I'm going to offer another resource here that we can discuss some of the very common mistakes that busy leaders make, and no sort of, it's like they're not intending to make these mistakes, but this is something that we've developed that I call the 8 mistakes to avoid when hiring interns. So let me just pull this up here for a moment. And we've already gone over a few of these points, so I'm not going to speak to every single one, but I am going to share my screen. This is another resource that you guys can get through our website. It's visionsinternships.com. If you click on the organizational side of things, you'll see this as a free resource, as a download. So we've already discussed number one. I'm not going to go into that more. We already looked at fact sheet 71. Please know your federal and state guidelines around this. A second mistake is to lack internship program structure. So we already talked a bit about this, but make sure that you're taking the time up front to structure your internship program with clear goals, timelines, deliverables, milestones. Put that project management hat on. Have, even simple intern job descriptions. Have a process around interviewing and offer letters, onboarding materials, some kind of a project system and supervisory staff, as though you're bringing them on as employees, but not quite, right? Because you're so focused on that learning objective for the interns. This is so important, everybody. Number three is to assume that those interns know what you want them to do and how you want them to do it. They probably don't. So it's nothing personal, but just make sure that you're not assuming and that they have a little bit more instruction. I do love to say a reminder to our managers, please demonstrate before you delegate. As we've already discussed, you don't want to plug interns into some vague ongoing program, some ongoing operation that just goes on and on. You want to scope out intern appropriate, specific shorter term projects. And just a few other things to mention. Be mindful of what we call the purpose gap. This is a statistic that is very compelling for employers to know that sometimes you're missing what interns are looking for. So you're having a hard time attracting or retaining them, again, which ties directly to your bottom line. There's a high cost of turnover, as we know. Make sure you are plugging them into meaningful versus menial work, that you're minding the so-called purpose gap to help you both attract and retain your young talent. My friends, my best suggestion here, number 6, try not to hire just one intern at a time. Why? I like to give the example. I was a single mom of an only child during COVID, and there was the mom, right? If you can have 2 or more interns as a small cohort to grow at a time, you're going to free up your time. They're going to offer each other some support and camaraderie. They're going to need to discuss and exercise critical thinking, problem solving, and they're not constantly either, knocking on your door or in your inbox, or even worse, they're MIA. Okay. So whenever you can have 2 interns or more, it's ideal. And then, try not to put the entire internship program just on one staff member. You always want to have 2 to 4. That's why in my internship insider training, we really focus on training 2 to 4 of the related staff members, even though it's good to have one key accountable. And then finally, number 8 mistake here is to mislead interns that, oh, they're guaranteed employment after this internship. That's just not the nature or design of internship. So I'm going to stop share. I hope those mistakes to avoid will save you some headache. And I want to take a pause, just see how you guys are doing, and then I'm just going to offer some next steps with your permission. I do want to share with you what we offer for Visions Internships and just let you know quickly the big picture of the services we offer, mainly for organizational leaders. And we do offer, really, as I mentioned, that conference, some other career support for young people, and I'll let you know when the next training is coming up to help you if you are interested in designing and launching your own internship program. So why don't I pause here, guys? How are we doing? Was there anything particularly useful, or again, any question or thought that's popped up?
I think the point that you made about hiring 2 or 3 interns at the same time is a good idea because it sets up a buddy system.
Totally. That's exactly right. Yeah, we call it the committed colleague structure, the fancy buddy. COCO, the committed colleague, right? They have somebody to lean on and learn with, right? It's really exciting, actually. So, with your permission, my friends, if I could just let you know what, and I know some of you, you guys, we've chatted, but I would like to know, you to know what offerings we have. Again, it's primarily for that left-hand side for organizations. Is that okay just to share what we do? And then I'm just going to mention when the upcoming Internship Insider training is, with your permission. You guys good with that? Awesome. Thanks. I'll pay you later. Just kidding. Okay, so on the organization side, our core service here is called the Internship Insider. And we do have the Internship Insider training, which is the main thing I'm going to speak to you about in the next slide. I'll let you know when that 5-week training is coming up. But essentially, this is a way to really focus in 5 short weeks to really help you design your right fit internship program. So that's that training 2 to 4 people in your organization to help you step by step design your internship program. And you walk out of that essentially with an internship playbook that whoever is responsible can go ahead and run a sustainable internship over time. So that's the training. The consulting is, it's a similar outcome, but it's going to be help designing and launching what we've designed. And it's a more customized consulting arrangement. And then what we've learned is we need to support the people that have gone through the process of designing and launching and running a program. Well, now we need to support those internship program staff, right? Because this is not the only thing they're doing. They've got a lot of other hats, and we just want to make it doable. So we do Zoom with our members twice a month, and we help support those internship staff. So that I just want to thank, if anyone's watching this, if you were in our previous programs, thank you for that feedback. We did pull apart the training and the membership, and I really feel good about what we're offering now under the Internship Insider. On track, I'll just speak to very briefly. This is basically, once you've got that program up and running, I've had my clients come back and say, okay, Amy, so you help keep my interns on track now, right? And I was like, oh, say more. So now, of course, we use that same language and we have something called on track. So I'm Zooming directly with those young professionals, whether they're interns or not, to help them in the areas of goal setting, productivity, and accountability. And that's what I call the new GPA, by the way. You guys know I taught college. My students were obsessed with their grade point average. And I love to remind young people what employers actually care about, which is goal setting, productivity, and accountability. That's how we run on track. And then there's some other tailored services we can talk about another time. And I do just want to emphasize again our Career and Leadership Conference. It is coming up because it is a really great date. So save this. I know, Joe, we've already talked about this briefly, but 6/26/26, June 26, 2026, it's going to be happening at WPI in Worcester. And that is our signature program for young people with some other, career coaching. And then I do some other, training and free support for young people to help them with the skills and support to succeed. So those are all of the entire offerings for my company, but I really just wanted to focus on inviting you to yourself, or someone you know that may be a busy leader who's wanting professional help, support, really designing the right fit internship program. And I'm happy to give more information about this. And if this would be a good fit, we can jump on a call. We can follow up after today. But basically, it starts on my late mother's birthday, which is the lucky March 17th. So March 17th, we're going to be kicking off the next Internship Insider training, and it runs for 5 weeks, and it tends to meet Tuesday mornings from 9 to 11, plus Fridays from 10 to 11, and then each sort of company is responsible for doing a little bit of like about a 1 hour or so of your own filling in the playbook that I'm teaching you. So you're sort of working with your colleagues, but it's essentially 20 hours over 5 weeks. It's delivered via Zoom. It's $5,000 for the 5 weeks. And I do want to also say that Massachusetts employers can ask about a reimbursement option if you are paying into the current unemployment system. So that's a great option for Mass employers. And just let me know if you have any questions about that. So I'm keeping it pretty high level, guys, so we can connect after this if it's something you're interested in pursuing or want to pass on the details to someone you know. And these are just some of my lovely young people. Actually, Joe, you might recognize some of their faces. Even some of them were in my college classroom years ago, have come through programs. Obviously, our programs have morphed and changed, or they've been through our conference. But I just adore working with young people. And I do believe that together, by both supporting the busy organizational leaders and the young professionals, again, it's not just like a match and pray. We need to help those leaders structure and run a great program so that when there is a match, it's really a great win-win, and it's repeatable, it's successful, and I am going to say this out loud. It does need to be ROI as well for the business. So thank you guys so much. I'm guessing you might have a few thoughts or questions before we wrap, and I'll give you back the rest of your evening. But thank you for being here. Do you guys want to just maybe offer me, I'm going to stop my share here. do you want to just say anything that was most useful? Did something stand out? Maybe are you thinking something that you weren't thinking before you jumped on the internship Q&A with me?
Well, I think an internship program and the hiring of interns, it needs to be thought out and thought out
Yeah.
well. What does the business want out of it? What do the students or young professionals want out of it? And you have to try to make that marriage by developing a program and understanding what the business truly wants out of it. And if it's a bigger corporation, then obviously the ROI question needs to be answered and
Hmm.
positively.
Absolutely, Joe. Thank you. Linda, any observations, takeaways?
No, I think Joe hit on some important things. I think the I was aware of the difference between the paid and unpaid, but I think that is a very common misconception
Hmm.
that internships are it's fine to be unpaid and not really have thought through the process. I also think that if it's unpaid and you haven't done a structure, you're not going to get any real commitment either from the individual.
Yeah.
So I think that also kind of hurts on both sides.
Totally. No, thank you guys. And I'll just share one thing that is a little bit of a more recent development. In the last year or so, I've been working with a couple of, believe it or not, high schools here in Massachusetts through our Internship Insider, the consulting package. Remember how I said it's more like of a customized solution? So in Massachusetts, if you happen to be watching this and you're in Massachusetts, or maybe you have kids in high school in Massachusetts, there are many what we call Innovation Career Pathways, ICP designated high schools here in Massachusetts. And the opportunity there is that there's a real focus on having our graduating seniors get real world internship experience. So I've been helping some of these high schools, and honestly, whether they're ICP, I'm even meeting with another one this Friday that doesn't have that designation, but is very interested in career readiness and internship programming for their seniors. And by the way, it's a great strategy to counter senioritis, right? So we basically been working to help that, whether it be somebody in their career services, in guidance, there's usually somebody who's doing some sort of career programming. And so I'm supporting those people to help identify and develop actual internship sites and to support those sites while my client inside the school supports and recruits and prepares the students. So that's another really exciting um, avenue for all of this. So whether it's a school or a youth serving nonprofit, typically a youth serving organization or a school, and they're charged with developing internship experiences for their young clients or their students. So it's a little bit of a different model, but it's totally related because they still need those sites to develop those internship programs and get the support they need, and everybody wins. So again, whether it's a site or a youth serving organization, or it's directly helping a company, it's a very similar idea as helping them, the right people inside those organizations. Again, like you said, think through and structure and run a real good fit, right? Rather than like another thing on their plate, because nobody needs one more thing on their plate, right? No matter what role you hold, we kind of like need the thing to take something off the plate, make it more efficient, right? And move the needle. So thank you guys so much. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed our interaction, and it wouldn't have been possible without you being here and your participation. So I'm sure we will talk soon. Please message me if you had any afterthoughts, or you're interested in the program I mentioned, or you have people that might be a good fit for internship insider training, again starting on March 17th. So thank you so much. It's been my pleasure, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Stay warm out there, my friends. Okay,
Thank you very much.
take
Thanks, Amy.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.